Good morning, everyone. It's a true story that happened in Israel a number of years ago. There was a young man, a yeshiva boy, who it came time for him to get married, and he started going on dates. You know, you've all been to Israel, you've seen in the hotel lobbies the yeshiva boys dating, there's a certain way they're set up with matchmakers, they go on dates based on their qualities and their families, and that's the way it's done in the Orthodox community. There was a yeshiva boy, he was a very good boy, he learned well, he was a kind-natured boy, he had a good reputation, he got very good dates. But unfortunately he was having a hard time getting married. Why? Because none of his dates went past the first date. He couldn't get a second date. Why? Because although he was a very wonderful boy, he had this scar running across his face. And whenever girls would go out with him, they would see the scar, and he usually was rejected after the first date. And he knew he had this problem, but what could he do? One time he's on a date with a nice girl, and he sees she's staring at his scar the whole date. So he figures, okay, it's going to be a one-timer again. She obviously can't get past my scar. Towards the end of the date, she says, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? He says, sure, no problem. She says, where did you get that scar from? So he says to her, I'll tell you. A couple of years ago, I was walking to the old city to go to the Western Wall, to the Kotel. I was going through Shechem, the gate of Shechem. And as I'm walking through there, I see an Arab, a Palestinian, chasing a young girl down the streets, pursuing her with a knife at night. So I realized that this guy's going to, God forbid, kill her. So I started to run after him, and I managed to tackle him to the ground. I grabbed him by the legs, he fell, and I fell on top of him. Meanwhile, the girl ran off, and people saw the scuttle, the cameras, the Mishtara came. But as I was wrestling with this Palestinian Arab until the police got there, thank God he didn't kill me or slit my throat, but he managed, while he was lunging at me with the knife, to cut me across the face. And so the police came, and I was taken to the hospital, and I got stitches, and I had plastic surgery to try to repair it, but I've been left with that scar. He looks at the girl, and he sees the girl is shaking. She's like white. And she says to him, when did this happen? He says, I'll never forget it. And he gives her the exact, precise date. Suddenly she bursts out crying, and she says, Mazel Tov, we're engaged. He goes, Mazel Tov, we're engaged? What are you talking about? She said, I was that girl who was fleeing the Palestinian terrorists. And I managed to run away. But I never knew who it was that chased this Arab and tackled him to the ground. And you're the one. So obviously you saved my life. The only reason I'm on this date is thanks to you. And I can't thank you enough, and I want to marry someone as great as you. And they ended up getting married, actually. And the moral of the story is the message of this week's Parsha. Every day we go out into the world and we see people with scars. And we could either see a scar, or we could see the most beautiful beauty mark on their face, or in any other area of their life. It all depends how we look at that and understand what that represents in their life and why God gave them that set of circumstances and how they overcame those challenges. And if we see it from that perspective, instead of seeing it as a scar, as a flaw, we see it as a virtue, we see it as a beauty mark. This week's parsha is about the spies. They go to the land of Israel. 10 spies come back with a derogatory report saying the land is terrible, we can never conquer it, the people are too mighty. But 2 spies come back with a very positive, hopeful, faithful, uplifting report. And the question is, what happened? The 12 spies were on the same mission. They looked with the same eyes. And the answer is at the end of the parsha. At the end of the parsha we have the mitzvah of tzitzit. And at the end of the portion of tzitzit says, and see the tzitzit, and remember that I'm the God who took you out of the land of Egypt. When we look with eyes of faith, we realize that we shouldn't look at things in the natural way. Just like God took us out of Egypt in a supernatural way, we have to be able to see God's hand in everything in this world. And we have to be able to see beyond what meets the eye. And be able to see the beauty in everything that God created, and the purpose in everything that God created. And every person, in every life circumstance, in every challenge in life was put there for a particular purpose. And we could perceive it through those eyes. Then we have the eyes of Caleb and Yeshua, and we see the land that's flowing with milk and honey. We see a world that's flowing with God's blessings.